the first time I've ever played drums and then taught immediately afterwards. So if I'm like shaking or anything like that, just excuse it. It's actually a really high energy instrument, so I'm tired already. You can just have nap time instead of a message. Okay, 2 weeks ago, we started a new series entitled Who is God Really? And the whole point of this series has been to help us better understand who God is, to help us better appreciate what he's really like, and not just, okay, God is all-powerful and God is all-knowing, but what is he like? What's his character like? How can we describe him? Because the more we know him, the more we appreciate him. The more we appreciate him, the deeper we can walk in relationship with him, and that's what this whole thing is all about, really. So that's what the series has been all about, and we're 2 messages in so far. First, we looked at righteousness, the fact that we can call God righteous, that the Bible calls him righteous, the fact that he hates sin for what it does to us. He hates the dysfunction that it brings to our lives and the destruction it leaves in its path. And last week, we looked at faithfulness, the fact that God is faithful, that he will never leave us or forsake us. He has unconditional love and pursuit of us. So, like we looked at, we can describe God as righteous, and we can describe God as faithful. There's a third aspect that we're going to look at this morning, a third word that we can use to describe what God is like, and that's this. God is merciful. God is merciful. I think if you've been in the Bible much, I'm sure you've probably come across this term, mercy, full of mercy, merciful, at least once in describing God. It's one of those, I guess really you could say it's one of the main themes of the Bible, that God is a merciful God. Psalms 86 verse 5, King David says, "For you, O Lord, are good and forgiving, abounding in mercy to all who call upon you." Jeremiah says in Lamentations chapter 3, "The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases, his mercies never come to an end." And the Apostle Paul in Ephesians chapter 2 talks about God as being rich in mercy. He's not a God that is occasionally merciful or has some tendencies towards mercy. He's abundant in mercy. His mercies never come to an end. He's rich in mercy. So God is merciful. This is obviously a word that we can use to describe him, and that's good. But it doesn't mean anything if we don't understand what it means to be merciful. Because, let's take a step back and define our terms for a second. What does mercy mean? Like, what does the word mean? What does it mean to be merciful? Just think about it for a second, just in your own heads. If I were to ask you, define mercy in your own words, how would you define mercy? I'll give you a second to think about it. I'm feeling really cool this morning because I have a water bottle, and all of the best preachers have water bottles, and they say something and they drink. Dramatic pause, Feeling good. Have you thought about it? Okay, I always like to go to, it's the classic Webster's dictionary, right? And they've got everything. But I do not like the modern day stuff because not only is it like trudged down by political correctness, but they feel like it's okay to include words like swag and YOLO, and that's not a dictionary. I like to go back to the 1828 Webster Dictionary, the original one that written by just Noah Webster, just the guy. He was a really cool fellow. And he defines, in his 1828 dictionary, he defines mercy like this: that benevolence, mildness, or tenderness of heart, which treats an offender better than he deserves. I'll read it again. I think we have a slide as well. That benevolence, mildness, or tenderness of heart, which treats an offender better than he deserves. So that's what mercy is. It's saying, okay, you've done this, and you deserve to have this happen to you, but I'm going to give you this instead. You deserve this, I'm going to give you this. That's what mercy is. It's not giving an offender what he or she deserves. So good. That's what mercy is. That's what it means to be merciful. But let's think about our culture for a second. Let's just think about American culture, like where we live today. It's a question. Is our culture one in which mercy is dominant? Is our culture one in which mercy is particularly commonplace? Not really. I mean, you come across it occasionally, depending on the people you know, but in the general culture, in the marketplace, it's kind of a like dog-eat-dog world, cutthroat capitalism, right? Mercy's really it's not all that common. You know what is common? Personal vindication. Personal vindication, saying, you hurt me, and now I'm going to make sure you hurt too. You did this to me, and now I'm going to pay you back, right? Get payback. It's, he got what he deserved, right? Or serves him right is a phrase we use a lot here, serves him right. It's just our culture. Mercy's really it's not one of those dominant things. Personal vindication is. So luckily for us, God isn't like that. Again, the Bible describes God as being merciful. So, and again, it's one thing to talk about these ideas like God is merciful and, oh great, God, you're so merciful. But what does it look like played out? He's merciful towards who? Towards us? How does that work? What does God's mercy look like played out in reality? Like really just, what does it look like? In order to answer that question and to get a solid picture of what God's mercy looks like, we are going to take a look at one of the most well-known teachings of Jesus Christ on the subject. How many of you have heard of or read yourselves the parable of the prodigal son? Right? It's a classic. It's probably one of the most, if not the most well-known. I don't know what that is. It's probably one of the most well-known parables that Jesus ever taught. Prodigal son, it's Sunday school. It's all over the place. It's one of the really big ones. We're going to look at that parable this morning because there are some truths that Jesus communicated through that parable that are absolutely profound for us understanding what it means for God to be merciful. It's really cool, and so we're going to look at that in some depth this morning. Ready? Okay. Here's the backdrop for the parable. Jesus was at a point in his ministry where because of the message that he was bringing and because of the love that he showed in his life and because of the miracles that he was doing, he was attracting some unsavory folk. He was attracting the diseased people and the sinners and the prostitutes and the tax collectors, all the people that the Jews would say are like the scum of the earth. They were flocking to Jesus because he was loving them and he was telling them there's a better way, and he was performing miracles and healing them. And of course he would attract them. The doctor attracts the sick. Duh, that's what Jesus said. But the Jews, and particularly a group called the Pharisees, who were very concerned with obeying the law to the letter, they weren't really happy about this. Because to them, these people, all these sinners and the prostitutes, they're messed up. Their lives are messed up because of their own stupid decisions. Like they've got what's coming to them. Like they deserve all the dysfunction in their lives. They did this to themselves. So they were very much like, let's not associate with them. But Jesus was accepting them, and they were grumbling about the fact that Jesus was accepting and hanging out and ministering to and loving on these, the scum of the earth, the sinners. So they were grumbling, and in response to their grumbling, and I guess Jesus is overhearing them like, Jesus is hanging out with the sinners again. Jesus overhears this, and in response to that, he launches into a story. He begins a parable, and this is the parable of the prodigal son. Now, if you've heard it, stay with me because there's always stuff that we miss. And if you haven't heard it, you're in for a real treat because it's really neat. So we're going to be in Luke chapter 15, starting in verse 11 if you want to follow along in your own Bible. But we also have it up here on the screen, so you don't have to if you don't want to. I'm going to go ahead and start here. Jesus starts it like this. There was a man who had 2 sons. And the younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the share of property that is coming to me. And he divided his property between them. So this is a pretty straightforward beginning. There's a Jewish guy who has 2 sons. The younger son comes to him and does what? What does he demand? His inheritance. He said, okay, so you guys know how an inheritance works, right? Like, son, when I die, you get this, right? So the son comes and he doesn't even request. Like, there's no hint of a request in his tone. He says, give me what is my due, basically. Give me what's coming to me. His father's obviously not dead, if he's talking to his father, I hope. Father's quite alive, and this is, to me, it seems like a bit of a callous thing to do, right? I mean, think about it, like a son coming to a father and saying, hey, you know that stuff I'm going to get when you die? Let's just pretend you're dead and give it to me now, right? I mean, it seems like this is a slap in the face. This is a slap in the face. The father takes it in stride, and he divides his property, goes ahead and gives the older son his inheritance and the younger son his. Father, give me my inheritance. The slap in the face is about to get worse. As we go into verse 13. It says he got his inheritance, and not many days later, the younger son gathered all he had and took a journey into a far country. So he's got his stuff now, and I guess he's intoxicated with all his newfound resources. He's eager to use it, and so he splits within days, which very much, what does that say to the dad? He cares about the inheritance and doesn't care a rip about me, right? Okay, I got what I wanted. See ya. It also says here that he took a journey into a far country, somewhere his father can't reach him or interfere, somewhere that nobody knows him. He's going to live it up. He's going to take all his money and he's going to spend it. He's going to live the life. And he does. And he guesses what happens to this kid, this punk. The next statement, and he squandered his property in reckless living. Of course he did. I don't think we expected anything else from this jerk, this fool. He demands his inheritance, slaps his dad in the face, says, see ya. He splits, goes to a far country where nobody knows him, and he squandered his property in reckless living. And it doesn't say what kind of reckless living he did right here, but later on in the story, it clarifies that he spent it on prostitutes and every kind of worldly pleasure he could get his hands on. He had the money, and he blew it. Like it was burning a hole in his pocket. He split, and he lived it up, and he squandered all his property in reckless living. Next verse down, it says, and when he had spent everything, a severe famine arose in that country, and he began to be in need. So, of course, he blows all his money. He's in a far country where nobody knows him, and suddenly he's in need. We don't know how long it took for him to run out of money, but you kind of get the impression it wasn't long. Maybe months, maybe a year. He blew it all, and he found himself with nothing. How bad was his need? We're about to see in the next verse, verse 15. He's found himself in need, so he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country, who sent him into his fields to feed pigs. Now watch this. And he was longing to be fed with the pods that the pigs ate, and no one gave him anything. This is, I guess what you'd call rock bottom, right? He takes all his dad's inheritance, goes off to a far country, blows it on prostitutes and any kind of worldly pleasure he can get his hands on, and he has nothing. Suddenly he finds himself destitute. He's longing to have even what the pigs had, which has got to be a really bad place to be. I've never been that low before. Feeding pigs, and I wish I had as much food as that pig did. And it makes a point here to say, no one gave him anything. This is his lowest depth here. He's at the point of perishing unpitied. He's going to die. He's going to disappear alone in this world, unmissed. This is rock bottom. And notice what justice in us feels about this. Serves him right. Right? Punk. Slapped his dad in the face, split with his inheritance, blew it in just stupidity and foolishness, and now he's getting his just desserts. I mean, he brought this upon himself. Would anyone argue that? He did that. That was him. On nobody but himself. Like, tough luck, man. You did this. But here's what happens next, and it's pretty cool. Verse 17, it says, but when he came to himself, he said, how many of my father's hired servants have more than enough bread, but I perish here with hunger? And I love the way this is worded. It says, when he came to himself. Like you can almost see the moment of realization where what am I doing? He's sitting in squalor, feeding pigs in filth and rags, wishing that he had as much food as the pigs had. No one gave him anything, and suddenly he comes to himself. Almost gets like a third-person perspective of him sitting in the mud and the dirt, wishing that he had the pods the pigs had. He says, even the servants had it better than this in my father's house. They had enough food to spare. What am I doing? Why did I ever leave? Why would I have left for this? I'm a fool. You can almost see the moment of realization. He came to himself. Notice that it was his affliction. It was the consequences and the experience of pain and suffering that his foolish actions brought upon him that brought him to the point of coming to himself. But he acts on it. It says in Luke, it says in verse 18, I will arise and go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me as one of your hired servants. So what's his hope here? He knows he messed up. You know at this point, he knows he's got nothing. He knows he's screwed up. He says, Father, I'm sorry. I'm going to tell him I'm sorry, and I'm going to ask if he'll have mercy on me and to let me be a servant, because it'd be merciful of him to even let me do that. And so he leaves. It says in Luke verse 20, and he arose and came to his father. But watch this. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him. So the guy gets up, the son gets up, and he starts the long trek, and who knows how long it took him. He's in rags and filth, messed up, and the father sees him from a long way off. He sees his son in his filth, in his squalor, in his rags, in his haggard, shattered wretchedness. And what? What does the boy deserve right now? What does he deserve? A rebuke, right? What are you doing here? How dare you show your face to me again? You took your inheritance, you slapped in my face as if I didn't even matter, you left, you blew it all on stupid living, and now you come back to me in rags with nothing, as if I'm going to have pity on you and let you come take more of my money? How dare you? That's what he deserves, right? Those would be his just deserts. That would serve him right. We'd come full circle, and that'd be the moral of the story is, don't take your inheritance before your dad's dead. And you know what? I really think the son knows what he deserves at this point. I don't think he has any delusions that he deserves to be let back in the home. I don't think he has any delusions that he even deserves to be a servant. He knows what he deserves. But perhaps, the son thinks, perhaps my father will show me mercy and let me be a servant. Maybe he'll show mercy on me and let me be a servant. I know what I deserve, but maybe he'll be merciful. But note what it says here. He arose and came to his father, but while he was still a long way off, his father saw him. Now, this is a guy of means, the father is. Obviously, he has money, he has wealth. You don't have time to sit around on your porch looking around for things approaching your house. Oh, there's something. Oh, it's my son. This is a busy man. To see something from a long way off and to recognize what it is, you're looking for it. That's how sight works. A guy like this is not going to be sitting around on his patio just looking out at the horizon. But he sees his son from a long way off. How? Why? Because he was looking. You spot something and recognize it from a long way off if you're looking for it. There's a father who his son splits, spat in his face, took his inheritance, and he sits and he waits, and he watches, and he sees his son come up from a long way off in rags and filth, and what does he do? It says in the next statement, while his son was still a long way off, the father saw him, recognized him, and felt compassion, and ran to him and embraced him and kissed him. In all his filth and all his rags, The father saw his son, his foolish son, who spurned him, feels compassion and runs to him and embraces him and kisses him. And the son, in his shock, this is funny to me, tries to launch into the speech he prepared. It says, and the father said to the son, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. What comes next? Please let me be a servant, right? He never gets that far. The father doesn't let him finish. He cuts him off. And it says, the father said to his servants, bring quickly the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his hand and shoes on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let us eat and celebrate. He says, bring the best robe and put him on him. In the Jewish culture, the best robe was used only for birthdays and festival times. He says, bring the robe and put it on him. He says, put a ring on his finger, which in the Jewish culture was a sign of honor and dignity. He says, put shoes on his feet, because one of the distinguishing features of slaves or servants at the time was they went barefoot. He says, put shoes on his feet. He says, kill the fattened calf, because the fattened calf was saved specifically for festival times. Why is he doing this? This is not what the kid deserves at all. This is above and beyond. Why is the father doing this? He tells us. He says, for my son was dead and is alive again. He was lost and now he is found. And they begin to celebrate. And so the son's thoughts is, even the servants had more bet. I'll go to my father and I'll beg for an apology, and maybe he'll show mercy to me and let me be a slave. Maybe he'll show mercy to me and let me be a servant in his house. But the mercy of the Father infinitely exceeds any hope of mercy that the Son had. And why does the Father do this? My son was dead and is alive. He was lost and now he is found. What does the Father care about? What is his concern with here? Personal vindication? Is he concerned with his son getting his just deserts? I'm going to teach this kid a lesson. Get out of here. That's what the kid deserves. 100% that's what he deserves. What is the father concerned about? His son. He's concerned about getting his son back. That's what he wants. That's what he cares about. You don't see a lick of care about being vindicated, teaching him a lesson, showing him how reality works. He wants his son back. And so everything's forgotten. Put the best robe on him, put a ring on his finger, shoes on his feet, slay the fatted calf. I'm not just going to receive you and accept your apology. I receive you with honor and dignity as my beloved son because I love you and I've been sitting and waiting for you to come back. His concern is with getting his son back. And that is the heart of God for every single one of us. That is the heart of God for every single one of us. That is the core of his motivations. That's his concern. It's us. It's getting us. Because here's the thing. The fact is we've all gone prodigal. The fact is we all do our best to consume our lives and every kind of worldly pleasure we can get our hands on. We fill our minds up with all kinds of useless garbage. We refuse to walk in relationship with our Creator. We waste the gifts God gives us. And where is God in all this? Is he looming over us, planning ways to punish us, give us what we deserve? I'm going to teach these guys a lesson. I'm going to give them their just desserts. No. If Jesus Christ is to be believed, God is sitting and he's waiting and he's watching. He's ready and willing to extend his abundant mercy as soon as he sees us coming from a long way off. Ready to feel compassion, ready to run to us and embrace us and kiss us. If Jesus is to be believed, to be believed. That is the heart of God. Mercy. Not an obsession with personal vindication. Not a care for us getting our just desserts. He wants us. And that's what it means for God to be merciful. We are 100% undeserving of his love and his favor and his forgiveness and his acceptance. We are undeserving. I could not tell you how many times I have hurt God with my actions, how I've fractured our relationship and turned away from him. I can't tell you how many times. And I think that's probably true of a whole lot of us here. In real life, if somebody fractures your relationship with you 5 or 6 times, you're like, look, man, you've had your chance, right? I forgave you over and over and over again, and you hurt me over and over and over again. We're done, right? That's how real life works. That's giving what they deserve. They deserve this. It's over. We don't deserve God's continual forgiveness, but what he cares about is us. Not personal vindication, not our just desserts. He cares about us and getting us. And that's awesome. That's really awesome. We're very lucky to have such an incredible God who gives us what we don't deserve. Does this mean that we can do whatever we want and then come to God for forgiveness with no consequences? No. The Son, his Father accepted him back in love and honor and dignity, but the Son hurt himself a lot. That inheritance is gone forever. He wasted months or even years of his time. He scarred himself. There are consequences to our actions, but God wants us. In every case that God can extend mercy, he will, and that's just who he is. So, in the coming week, and these messages are a little bit different in this series because there is no, go and do this, change this part of your life, add this habit to your life, whatever. We're learning about who God is. But the purpose of this whole thing is that we can understand him more so we can walk in deeper relationship with him. So my challenge to us is in the coming week, take 3 times, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, however long, and sit down and just contemplate God's mercy in your own life, in the lives of others. Contemplate what it means that God desires you so much. He doesn't care about vindication or just desserts or whatever else. He wants us. Sit down and think about that and appreciate it, because it is incredible. That's an incredible truth. And until we understand that fully, we're not going to be able to walk in relationship with God as deeply as we could. We're going to have the band come up as we close. And at the end of every message, we have a time where we're going to have some of the leaders standing up at the front. And if you have anything you'd like to pray for or be prayed for, we'd love to pray for you. You can feel free to come up as the band plays. But I'm going to go ahead and close this message in prayer. God, I am so grateful that you don't give me what I deserve, that you don't cut me off and leave me on my own. I'm so grateful, Father, because I deserve that. I've hurt you so many times and I've walked away so many times, God. I don't deserve to have you continue associating with me. And I'm so grateful that you do. God, I pray that you'd give me and you'd give every single one of us a deep understanding and revelation of what it means that you're merciful and that you care about us over anything else. Would you help us to understand that and appreciate that? Would you remind us to take time this week to sit down and understand that? You're such an incredible God. We love you, Father. Amen.